So Tom sent us the following email. He said, I purchased 2 of your Cherry Explosion Hydrangeas. They are beautiful. Since I saw on the tag they can be planted in a container, I have a couple of questions. How large a container is needed for healthy roots? And how do I winter these? Is a heated garage okay? Very smart questions. Aaron had actually responded to him and with very smart answers. The container needs to be bigger than the existing root system. And you got to keep in mind, all the hydrangeas that we sell, there's not like somebody digging them out of the ground like you'd have a balled and burlapped arborvitae or something along those lines. They're grown in containers from the time that they're little 4-inch rooted cuttings to the time that they're great big. I mean, we've had 15-gallon sized hydrangeas. So they're always available in a container. So keep that in mind. But how big of a container? For now, you're going to want to go to 2 or 3, maybe even 4 inches wider than the pot is now, and a little deeper. The depth isn't as important necessarily as the width, so it can grow those roots out. Keeping them in a container requires that you need to feed them, and you need to take care of them beyond just watering. But watering is important because hydrangeas love to be heavily watered. That doesn't mean they like to be wet, right? We have a pond segment coming up in the show, and they are not pond plants, okay? They do not cross over to pond plants, but they do like it moist. They can take the shade. But again, you need to make sure that you're giving them enough moisture, but you're also that soil that you're going to use, and that we would recommend using the Gardener's Gold by Master Nursery. That is a great soil for your hydrangeas. And you also want to feed them. And what I would feed them with, depending on, these are Cherry Explosion, so they're going to be a little bit different pH. Your pH is going to be a little bit higher so that they keep that color. And that's what you really want. They're a beautiful plant, and that you don't want to confuse them by giving them an acid-type fertilizer that you see for shrubs or see for hydrangeas, because what it'll do is that'll kind of make them a muddled pink, or, again, that cherry color, which is a close red with a little bit of white actually in it. So make sure that you're feeding them a liquid fertilizer, like a standard 20-20-20, which is from Jack's Classic, would be fine. That's a water soluble. You're going to do that probably maybe once a month. You don't have to do it the same amount as you would your annuals. But then we get to his question about keeping it in a winter oasis. So his garage is heated. Lucky you. But it needs some vernalization. Vernalization is when plants need to go through a cold cycle in order for them to bloom the following year. Like, for instance, all your daffodils and tulips and those kind of plants all need to have vernalization. There are a large number of plants that need that. And I would not put them in that heated garage. I would keep them outside, and that they're going to get cold and they're going to freeze. You can move the pots, being that they're mobile, and you can move them into a section where it's not going to get a lot of winter wind. But you got to make sure that, one, you're using frost-resistant containers, okay? You also want to protect them from that winter wind, but you want to keep them watered. Have you ever looked around this year and you notice great big arborvitae and even small arborvitae have died? We went into the winter season being very, very dry. And the roots of those arborvitae and other plants, and we're going to be talking in our next segment about some Japanese hollies, that they didn't have enough moisture in the root system and therefore up through the stems to be able to hold off a dry winter season. And that's pretty much what we had. So you got to make sure that you're keeping them moist all the way through. Water them all the way through before the ground freezes solid, or until the ground freezes solid. Your plants will come back and the flowers will be much better the following spring when you do that. Otherwise, you're risking them being dead, quite frankly. It also becomes a issue with, are they warranted then? They're not being planted in the ground. Is that their best spot? Not really. It's an individual basis. But again, you've got to do everything. Like we have a saying at Bloomers, we give you living plants that are in the best possible shape you can get when you get them. And we guarantee them to live, but it's up to you to make them thrive. If they just don't look good, they're still under warranty. And that it's up to you to make them thrive. So if you're putting them into a position, especially in a dry environment over the winter where you're not putting them in a protected area because they are in containers rather than put in the ground, it's up to you to make them thrive. And that all your local garden centers will give you advice about how to take care of them. And don't make the mistake of putting them in that heated garage, because all of a sudden now they become a houseplant. Now, if your garage is heated, meaning that it just doesn't get below 32, maybe. But it sounds like it's a nice, warm, toasty area. So, again, you can do it. Hydrangeas have been in pots their entire life so far. They haven't been planted in the ground yet. So they're used to being in pots, but they're also used to being taken care of at the nursery. So make sure you're watering all the way up till the ground is frozen. And that may mean into almost December. So keep them watered, keep them watered, keep them watered. Move them into a place where they're not going to be out in front of your house, subject to all the winter winds. Put them in a protected area, and that they should do great the following year. And don't prune them back in the fall. Don't prune them back in the fall. You want to leave them just go. The only time I would prune them back is probably right now, right after they're done blooming. Once they're done blooming, that first flush of blossoms, that's when you trim them back, and then you leave them alone. All right? Well, Tom, I hope that helps.